Hi everybody, welcome to week 3. This week we're going to be working on 3 activities that are going to make you stronger readers and writers. The first 2 are going to be the focus of this video, and that's annotating, or taking notes as you're reading, and then summarizing. So you have a couple of assignments that are going to help you do both of these things. The first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is look at this article annotation guide, which gives you a description of what it means to annotate, right? So as I said, it's just taking notes. And this is where you become, instead of a passive reader who's just accepting the information that's coming, you become an active reader who is critically engaging with not only what the author is writing about, but also how they're doing it. So this description suggests different ways that you can annotate. One is to find and define vocabulary words that you're not familiar with. This is the number one way to build your vocabulary, is when you find a word that you don't understand, look it up. There's many ways to do it. They suggest you draw a line where the introduction ends, underline or highlight sentences that seem to be the author's main point. You can also underline, highlight, or draw a star next to what you think are the author's main points, or just things that you're interested in. This was how I started to become a really active reader. I used to just underline lines that I thought were beautiful or interesting, and then I would write them on my wall when I was in high school, which my mother thought was really charming. She didn't. And then what I'll ask you to do is write a summary of it. So I want to start by demonstrating what my annotating process looks like, and I'm going to use the article that you read last week. And this was called Do Not Disturb How I Ditched My Phone and Unbroke My Brain. So one thing that I also do in all of my classes, and I also take classes at SMC as well, and I've been taking them online since COVID, is I always download all of the essays or articles that we read if they're online sources, and then I can annotate them using whatever my PDF viewer is. So if you have questions about how to do that, I'd be happy to show you. So last week we read an article called Do Not Disturb How I Ditched My Phone and Unbroke My Brain by Kevin Ruse. And for some reason I always write that his name is Rose. I don't know why. Okay, so if I was reading this is the way that I might annotate it, right? So my name is Kevin and I have a phone problem. And so it's an interesting way to begin, right? He's starting with, here, the first person, right? I. And if you're anything like me, and the statistics suggest you probably are, at least where smartphones are concerned, you have one too. And then I notice here, he's writing in the second person. So first he starts in the first person by saying I, and then he moves to the second person, you, right? He's speaking directly to the reader. So this is something that sometimes in college or school writing, you're told to write more formally or write in the third person where you don't use you or I. But notice that he's doing that here, and it's just interesting. We don't necessarily have to comment on it. So then he goes on, I don't love referring to what we have as an addiction. Now he's switched to we, right? We're all in the same boat. And he's also saying that he doesn't like the word addiction. And so for me as a reader, I'm like, why is that? And he explains it pretty quickly, right? That seems too sterile and clinical. And I like those words because he's kind of explaining why he feels this way. To describe what's happening to our brains in the smartphone era, unlike alcohol or opioids, phones aren't an addictive substance so much as a species-level environmental shock. So if you remember from the essay that we read last week about description, one thing that they pointed out is to look at metaphors or similes. And here he's using a simile. It's a negative simile, right? Because he's saying it's not like this, but he's essentially saying that this relationship that he has with his phone, it's kind of like an addiction, but not like that. And he's actually clarifying to say it's like a species level environmental shock. And I just love that phrase. I think it's really interesting. One question I might ask myself as a reader is, let's see if I can get this to work. No, I guess it won't. But I would write in the margins, do I agree? Do I think that cell phones or smartphones have had that effect? He goes on, we might someday evolve the correct biological hardware to live in harmony with portable supercomputers that satisfy our every need and connect us to infinite amounts of stimulation. But for most of us, it hasn't happened yet. And so here I might have another question is like, do I agree with that? Here's the text box. Do I agree? So if I was writing later in response to this might be a place that I could go and kind of start my thinking. All right, so now he starts to get into more vivid and specific descriptions of his own experiences with this, right? I've been a heavy phone user my entire adult life, but sometime last year, I crossed the invisible line into problem territory. My symptoms were all the typical ones. I found myself incapable of reading books, watching full-length movies, or having long uninterrupted conversations. And so here he gives us specific examples of how he knew he had a problem, right? So as I was saying before, with descriptive writing, you're always focusing on vivid, specific examples. And for him, that's what those examples are. For you, they might be different, right? Here now, more clear, social media made me angry and anxious. And a question I might have is that true for you or me? I recently completely dropped off of Facebook, and I have to say I feel much better. My interactions with Twitter and Instagram don't make me feel as angry as Facebook once did. And even the digital spaces I once found soothing. And here he lists those specific spaces. Group texts, podcasts, and YouTube K-holes weren't helping. I tried various tricks to curb my usage, like deleting Twitter every weekend, turning my screen grayscale, and installing app blockers, but I always relapsed. Again, here are specific examples of things that he did, right? So if you were ever writing about, well, this is my relationship to technology, you might do different things. Okay, so eventually in late December, I decided that enough was enough. I called Catherine Price, a science journalist and the author of How to Break Up with Your Phone, a 30-day guide to eliminating bad phone habits, and I begged her for help. And so this then ends up being what the whole essay is really about. Mercifully, she agreed to be my coach for the month of January and walk me through her plan step by step. Together, we would build a healthy relationship with my phone and try to unbreak my brain. So this is really where the introduction ends. And then if you remember from reading this, he divides his essay or article into sections, right? A bit horrifying is this one. Then withdrawal sets in, a thorough cleansing, and I asked you about that in the quiz. Rewired and renewed is the final section. So I'm not going to go through all of these because you don't need to watch a 15-minute video of me reading something. But this is the process by which you annotate, right? You begin to basically speak to the text and start thinking about reading more as a conversation, right? What is this author trying to convey to me? How are they doing that? What's working and what doesn't? Okay, so now if we go back to our article annotation guide, then I'm asking you to watch this video. This is the video I'm asking you to watch. But the annotation guide has in it also a guide to summary, right? And this is what your activity is for this week. I want you to write a 1-paragraph summary of this article, The Pointlessness of Unplugging. But what I'm going to do right now is demonstrate how to write a 1-sentence summary by summarizing the article we read last week, the Do Not Disturb. How am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to do it with Mad Libs. So has anybody ever played Mad Libs? Maybe you have. I played it a lot when I was a kid, but I was kind of and maybe I still am a language nerd, and I just loved anything to do with language. And so what Mad Libs were like little stories, but a word would be missing. And so what you would do is before you read the story out loud, you would ask your friend or friends to give you certain parts of speech. So in this case, you would say, hey, give me a body part. And your friend might say knee. And then you would, in the end, you'd get all the parts of speech. So here, like, love is what makes that, well, I need a noun. A noun is a person, place, or thing. And maybe I say, but, right? Because when you're little, like, you would just use silly words, right? And so then your friend would read the whole story out loud with all the words that you gave them. And so it'd be love is what makes the butt go round. And you would laugh, laugh, laugh. So how is that like writing a summary? Well, writing a summary is really about just getting the key points of of anything that you're reading. And I always challenge people to do it in one sentence, right? I think writing in a one-sentence summary is one of the most difficult things you can do. And so what you want to do in a summary is you include the author, the title, and the main idea of the article. So that could be the who, what, where, the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. They say paraphrase the author's words rather than copying them. This is a summary. You're summarizing it in your own words. This becomes a process of interpretation. So you don't want to just copy and paste, right? That's not going to help you to learn anything about the essay. And then this also isn't about your opinion. A summary is really just about your what's in the article. So to do this, I've created a Mad Lib, right? And I'm going to attach this to the assignment so that you can use this as well. And basically you just fill in the blanks. So in author's names article, and then you put in the article title, then where it's published and when. You don't always have to include that, but I'm going to ask you to do it for this assignment. Then verb, right? What is it that they're doing? And what's nice is that this our annotation and summary lesson includes helpful verbs for summaries, right? So things like discusses, explains, explores, demonstrates, describes. And then finally what the article is about. So these things are really easy, right? So for the article we just read, Kevin Roos's article, and then you'd put in the article title. And of course you can have the article open while you're doing this. I don't expect you to memorize things. So the article title is, Do Not Disturb How I Ditched My Phone and Unbroke My Brain. Paste that in. Published in, and this was published in the New York Times. The names of magazines and journals are always italicized. And I believe it's February, what is the exact date? There it is, February 23rd, 2019. And I would say what he's doing largely in this essay is describing. So they describe, and because he identifies as a he, we could say he describes his experience trying to limit his use of smartphone and how it changed his life. Right? This isn't the best summary that I've ever written, but I think it kind of captures it. I think we could probably make it a little bit more specific. But look, it's just one sentence, right? In Kevin Roos's article, do not disturb. Oh, and articles are always in quotation marks. Do not disturb how I ditched my phone and unbroke my brain, published in the New York Times on February 23rd, 2019. He describes his experience trying to limit his use of his smartphone and how it changed his life. Right? And that's it. That's a one-sentence summary. If you have any questions, of course, you can come to office hours or send me an email. For this assignment, what you'll do is you're going to read this article called The Pointlessness of Unplugging, annotate it, and then write a one-sentence summary that includes all of this information. It is a quiz, but the great thing about this quiz is that you can revise it as many times as you need to until you've perfected your summarizing skills. So like everything else when it comes to writing, it's a question of practice. The more you practice, the better you get. So if you get a grade on this that you don't like, you can revise and resubmit as many times as you need to get the grade that you want. All right. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care.